Imagine two people who live by the lake. They use the same water and they are exposed to the same environmental factors. But the risk of disease is not the same. This is the starting point of my research on schistosomiasis, a parasitic disease in humans that is mostly affected that they get by getting into contact with contaminated water. In sub-Saharan Africa, over the years, control of schisto has often treated exposure as gender neutral. But daily life is not gender neutral. Men and women engage in different activities that are mostly based on gender roles that are assigned to them. And these activities expose them to different levels of risk. This is where my research comes in. My research seeks to find out whether exposure is shaped by the kinds of activities that people engage in. To achieve this objective, I interviewed about 800 adults in Lakeside Kisumu. Then I analyzed the data separately for men and women, also along the seasons. The findings were very interesting. One of the main findings was that men had an overall infection rate of about 42.7% as compared to women of about 18.5%. However, when we look at the details, women's exposure was mostly tied to specific activities. For example, the most significant predictor among women was an unpaid activity, that is fetching water for livestock. In the rainy season, two activities stood out, that is paid gardening and harvesting from the lake. These activities expose women more to schisto infection than men. Let's look at the men. When we look at the men, their exposure was not associated with specific activities, but was associated more with the frequency of contact with the water. So the more men are getting into contact with the water, the more exposed they are. My message is simple. Schistosomiasis is not just about where people live. It's about who they are and the sort of activities they do. If we have to develop interventions, then we must take into consideration the daily realities of people and then target these pathways. Otherwise, when we meet these pathways, then the transmission will still continue. Mass drug administration is important, but it is not enough. We need to pair this with specific interventions that actually tackle some of the activities that women are engaging in, especially considering that they are those most at risk. Water is linked to survival, and when water is linked to survival, exposure is not a choice. So control must begin there. Thank you.